Hello, New Hope. Pastor Tommy here, and I hope you're doing well today. We have a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm going to jump right in. Basically, today I'm going to talk about, I'm going to walk you through the session agenda at some point, and during that, I'm going to talk to you about what we're talking about with regard to all the racial turmoil that's going on and that kind of thing, but also all the COVID stuff and the worship stuff. And I'm also going to give you a sermon teaser. I will answer questions if there are any comments. It's helpful, like if you write a comment, just let me know you're here even. And then finally, we will do the cat in the hat. So, racial turmoil. Not even sure where to start in some sense. Let me talk for a second about the current climate of racial turmoil and discussions in our country and in our church and in the denomination. Yesterday, we had a live stream with our denomination, and it was good in some ways. In other ways, I thought it could have been a lot better. On the other hand, there was only so much time, right? You have an hour, and there were 3 white pastors and 3 black pastors, all from our denomination. And so I wish they could have said more. I'll just be honest with you. As a pastor of a church that has both white members and black members, to put it lightly, the issue feels very complex, feels confusing sometimes, because basically there's two kinds of people. The ends of the continuum are basically this. On one hand, you have people who basically say, if you don't say something, you're a racist. Like if you don't come out and you make some kind of statement that you're a racist. On the other hand, some of the same people would say, if you don't say the right thing, you're a racist. You need to just, and other people would say, you just need to shut up. You're white, so you can't say anything. And so to people with that kind of perspective, what I would say is this, that basically, if you think about the issue of marriage counseling, right, which I've been through marriage counseling. I've counseled people, and something you would never do in marriage counseling if you really wanted reconciliation. So imagine there's a couple who they desire reconciliation and they desire to be together. And even let's say the guy was a little abusive and what have you, you would never start counseling by looking at the man and saying, you don't get to say anything. You just have to shut up and listen. You just wouldn't say that. You might say, let's listen to your wife talk. And then after that, if you have any questions, that kind of thing. And so that perspective of you just need to shut up, you can't say anything, really isn't helpful, honestly. On the other hand, there are people who would say, you know what, we just need to forgive and forget. Like there are white people and black people who are just saying, hey, we're America, we're all Americans, and we just need to forgive and forget, and we need to get past it. And well, if that's your perspective also, I'd say that's a little bit simplistic as well. I've been thinking about this. I don't know if I've ever said it in a sermon, but I experienced quite a bit of abuse and trauma as a child. And sometime in my adulthood, I had an event where I was able to meet with the perpetrator and genuinely tell him that I forgave him. Now, that said, even though I said that, and even though I feel that, and even though I meant that, I'm 53 years old. And at least once a year, maybe more, I wake up in the middle of the night with a nightmare and sweats screaming, right? Why? Because something during the day maybe has triggered all that past trauma, even though it's forgiven, even though I try to forget it. And oftentimes when my wife and I are watching television, if there's a situation that portrays like domestic abuse, she can see me getting upset and she will stop it. She says, are you okay right now? And so all that to say is we have members in our congregation, and certainly brothers and sisters throughout Christian churches, Black Christian churches, and all across the country, whose parents or grandparents experienced the trauma of Jim Crow, who experienced the trauma of police brutality, all of these things. So it's too simple to say forgive and forget. Ultimately, I think we need to forgive, but at some level, it's very difficult to not constantly have to have things come up. And so what does that mean for us? How do we address it? Well, I'm going to attempt to address it this Sunday with the gospel, right? The gospel is the only thing that we have to address this. The gospel is the only thing that can say to people who say, you don't have anything to say, or the people who say, we just need to forget about it. The gospel sort of cuts between that, and it both acknowledges sin, but it also acknowledges the hope of redemption. Also, this tonight at our session meeting, we are going to be talking about the issue of race and racism and all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to be meeting at some point. I reached out. I was driving across country last week, and I reached out to Dr. Braxton from New Beginnings Christian Fellowship up the street from us. And at some point we'll meet. We're having trouble syncing our calendars, but he and I will meet, or he and I and our wives will meet. And we ultimately hope to have leaders from both of our church meet to talk about the issue of racism in America. What does that mean? How pervasive is it really? How can we get past it? How can the church be different than the rest of the world? Because the other issue is that you don't hear in the news, and you wouldn't expect to hear in the news, is that all of us are sinners. And right, this is also not just a racism problem, but it's a worldview problem. How do you attempt to deal with the issue of race? Your worldview determines everything. And so we fortunately have the right one, right? And that we're Christians. And so with all of that said, let me tell you just real quickly by way of update. I thought you'd be interested in knowing what the session is doing. So tonight is a session meeting, and so if you're a prayer, please pray for that. Basically, session meeting starts with a devotional. I do that. We do God stories. One of the elders every week, every session meeting, shares about what's going on in his life. Then we do prayer requests and extended time of prayer. So if you want us to pray for something, write, probably it's best to write Samuel at newhopekent.org, because he's better at email than I am. Then we have pastors' reports, which are basically the elders want to know how the pastors are doing. And how are we doing? I think we're doing relatively well on one hand. On the other hand, it seems like Samuel told me I can't go on vacation anymore, because every time I go on vacation, something bad happens. And so right between dealing with the coronavirus and then the George Floyd stuff, it just seems like things keep piling up. So pray for us that way. We're also going to talk next about the recent race issues, session guidance for a specific response as a church. So we feel that's important to respond as a church. So not only do our members know, right, we have two Black elders in our church, right? Now we need to know what their perspective is, but also how do we communicate to our congregation, and how do we be in right relation with the churches around us. And then we're going to talk about COVID-19, steps toward reopening. And I think I pulled up here Uncle Jay's guidance. So those of you who are following this, right, I went out of town and we were at phase 1, and then we were supposed to go to phase 2, and I heard then we went to phase 1.5. So here's phase 1 for religious institutions, right? We're able to hold outdoor services on the organization's property or immediately adjacent to property explicitly permitted, with up to 100 individuals, excluding organization staff. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, hold indoor services at a place of worship up to 25% of capacity or 50 individuals, whichever is less, including organization and staff. Hold or provide in-home services or counseling inside a person's residence with up to 5 individuals, excluding staff. So, okay, that's fine. Where it gets dicey is when you get down to the things that we're required to comply with. And so I'm just going to read you one paragraph to give you some sense of it. Prior to beginning operations as described in this document, all religious and faith-based organizations are required to develop for each location, indoor and outdoor, a comprehensive COVID-19 exposure control, mitigation, and recovery plan. The plan must include policies regarding the following measures: PPE utilization, on-location physical distancing, hygiene, sanitation, symptom monitoring, incident reporting, location disinfection procedures, COVID-19 safety training, exposure response procedures, and a post-exposure incident project-wide recovery plan. A copy of the plan must be available at location for inspection by state and local authorities, but state and local authorities are not required to pre-approve the plan. Failure to meet planning requirements may result in sanctions, including the location of being shut down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly, it is just not, it's one thing to say, even if there's none of that stuff, it would be interesting to try and figure out, okay, how should we meet 25% of our congregation at a time? But the regulations that the government has imposed are so unbelievably onerous, that I'm not sure what that's going to be. We're discussing it as a session tonight. I think I told you that I presented a straw man proposal to the session, and they commented, and we'll discuss that tonight, and we'll let you know how we're moving forward after this. But at the end of the day, on one hand, we want to keep our members safe, and we want, especially our elder population. On the other hand, we're trying to just navigate. So what I guess I'm trying to be optimistic and say, this is a good time for us to figure out how to be the church, right? In the New Testament, there weren't big corporate worship services all the time. There were home meetings, and look at Acts 2:42 and 2:43. And so maybe God wants us to be doing something different now with all of that. So that is that. As far as the sermon teaser, next on my list, this week, really, we're looking at the Golden Rule, and the Golden Rule is the culmination of all the teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. It isn't the culmination of the Sermon on the Mount, because at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus challenges people to enter through the narrow gate, to avoid the wide gate, that kind of stuff. But be thinking about, as we go into the Sermon on the Mount this weekend, the last of the teaching parts, the Golden Rule that basically says to treat others as you would want to be treated. What is that actually saying? And Jesus said that summarizes all the law and all the prophets. And so Jesus bottom lines basically the whole Bible. And interestingly enough, in the providence of God, I think it is the primary, maybe the best text that we have, or we could look at, in order to figure out how to move forward talking about race, and to move forward as far as like understanding how to approach each other as Christians, and to approach each other as Christians who are different. Remember, the whole issue of race isn't a new issue, right? The New Testament at some level deals with it. It's Jew and Gentile, right? The Jews were racist toward Gentiles, and lots was written in the New Testament. And remember, in Ephesians 2, Paul says that the wall between Jew and Gentile has been torn down. And in Galatians 1 and 2, remember, Paul confronts Peter because Peter is being racist. He doesn't want to eat with the Gentiles. And so I think even bigger than that is what we're going to talk about this weekend. Now, do I know exactly what I'm going to say? Absolutely not. On the other hand, I think it's going to be important, because just the nature of the text and the nature of the times in which we find ourselves. So with all of that said, I'm willing to take any questions. I don't see any questions. I don't see any comments. So I'm going to give it a count to 10 in my head. And then I'm going to start reading The Cat in the Hat. If you're an adult now, you could scram if you want, right? Because this is for the kids. And it's probably gonna be super boring and probably not very good. But if you're a kid, you'll probably like it. So if you remember, we're in The Cat in the Hat, and what's happened so far in The Cat in the Hat is you have these two kids. It's cold and rainy outside. They can't go outside and play. Their mom is gone someplace. She's left them alone in the house. That's another issue altogether. Should they have had a babysitter? Are they old enough? Who knows? Nonetheless, I think it might have been nice to have some supervision given what happens, because all of a sudden in walks this 6-foot-tall cat wearing a hat, and he wants to play with them. Now, I would teach my children to not let him in, or at least to cry stranger danger and run. They didn't do that. They let the cat in. And if you remember, the only one who told the cat, you can't be here, is the fish. And the cat basically ended up juggling the fish. And so if you remember, the cat basically gets all these things from the house, and he's literally like balancing them everywhere. And I'm going to pick up on page 17 where the cat says, "Look at me, look at me, look at me now. It is fun to have fun, but you have to know how. I can hold up the cup and the milk and the cake. I can hold up these books and the fish on a rake. I can hold the toy ship and a little toy man, and look with my tail. I can hold a red fan. I can fan with the fan. I can hop on a ball, but that is not all. Oh no, that is not all." So what do you think's going to happen? Right, he's going to fall. That is what the cat said. Then he fell on his head. He came down with a bump from up there on the ball. And Sally and I, we saw all the things fall. And our fish came down too. He fell into a pot. He said, "Do I like this? Oh, no, I do not. This is not a good game," said our fish as he lit. "No, I do not like it. Not one little bit." "Now look what you did," said the fish to the cat. "Now look at this house. Look at this. Look at that. You sank our toy ship, sank it deep in the cake. You shook up our house and you bent our new rake. You should not be here. When our mother is not, you should get out of this house," said the fish in the pot. "But I like it here. Oh, I like it a lot," said the cat in the hat to the fish in the pot. "I will not go away. I do not wish to go. And so," said the cat in the hat, so, "I will show you another good game that I know." And then he ran out. And as fast as a fox, the cat in the hat came back with a box, a big red wood box. It was shut with a hook. "Now look at this trick," said the cat. "Take a look." Then he got up on top with the tip of his hat. "I call this game Fun in a Box," said the cat. "In this book are two things I will show you now. You will like these two things," said the cat with a bow. "I will pick up the hook. You will see something new. Two things, and I call them Thing One and Thing Two. These things I will not bite you. They want to have fun." Then out of the box came Thing Two and Thing One. They ran at us fast. They said, "How do you do? Would you like to shake hands with Things One and Thing Two?" Now look at that. Someone need to get a comb in the morning, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe they're just having a scissor strike and they need to go to the barber. Either one, Thing One and Thing Two got some pretty nasty hair. And Sally and I did not know what to do, so we shook hands with Thing One and Thing Two. We shook their two hands, but our fish said, "No, no. Those things should not be in the house. Make them go. They should not be here when your mother is not. Put them out," said the fish in a pot. Now the fish, he's a little sassy. He's a little cranky. I have to give you that. On one hand, on the other hand, he is right, I would say. "Have no fear, little fish," said the cat in the hat. "These things are good things," and he gave them a pat. "They are tame, oh so tame. They have come here to play. They will give you some fun on this wet, wet, wet day." Now think about it. Is that really going to be appealing to a fish? Because a wet day, he's already wet. Every day is wet for the fish. The cat either needs to up his game or he probably needs to go home. "Now here is a game that they like," said the cat. "They like to fly kites," said the cat in the hat. "No, not in the house," said the fish in the pot. "They should not fly kites in a house. They should not. Oh no, the things they will bump and the things they will hit. Oh no, I do not like it, not one little bit." Then Sally and I saw them run down the hall. We saw those two things bump their kites on the wall. Bump, thump, down the wall in the hall. Thing One and Thing Two, they ran up, they ran down. On a string of one kite, we saw Mother's new gown. Her gown with dots that are pink, white, and red. We saw one kite bump on the head of her bed. Now, I don't know about you, but the whole time I'm wondering where their father is. You never hear about him in this book. Maybe if their dad was there, Thing One and Thing Two might not have gotten a little out of hand. Then those things ran about with the big bumps, jumps, and kicks, with the hops and big thumps, and with all kinds of bad tricks. And I said, "I do not like the way they play. If Mother could see this, oh, what would she say?" Sorry, I got my voices mixed up there. Then our fish said, "Look, look." And our fish shook with fear. "Your mother is on her way home, do you hear? Oh, what will she do to us? What will she say? Oh, she will not like it to find us this way." again with a point. So do something fast, said the fish. Do you hear? I saw it. Your mother is near. So as fast as you can, think of something to do. You will have to get rid of thing one and thing two. Like, I don't think he means get rid of them. No, those of y'all who are wondering if he's talking about, I think he just means like scram. So fast as I could, I went after my net, and I said with my net, I can get them. I bet with my net, I can get those things yet. What do you think? Is he going to do it? Yes. Then I let down my net. It came down with a plop, and I had them at last. These two things had to stop. Then I said to the cat, now you do as I say. You pack up those things, and you take them away. Little Johnny's getting a little attitude now, isn't he? He said, oh, dear, said the cat, you do not like our game? Oh, dear, what a shame, what a shame, what a shame. Then he shut up the things in the box with a hook, and the cat went away with a sad kind of look. That is good, said the fish. He has gone away. Yes, but your mother will come. She will find a big mess, and this mess is so big and so deep and so tall, we cannot pick it up. There is no way at all. Now, the fish is what they would call the opposite of an optimist. And then, who was back in the house? Why, the cat. Have no fear of the mess, said the cat in the hat. I always pick up my playthings, and so I will show you another good trick that I know. Now that right there is sort of like a Roomba on steroids. Then I saw him pick up all the things that were down. He picked up the cake and the rake and the gown and the milk and the strings and the books and the dish and the fan and the cup and the ship and the fish, and he put them away and said, that is that. And then he was gone with the tip of his hat. Adios, he said. Then our mother came in, and she said to us too, did you have any fun? Tell me, what did you do? And Sally and I did not know what to say. Should we tell her the things that went on there that day? Should we tell her about it? Now, what should we do? Well, what would you do if your mother asked you? The end. Well, what would you do if your mother asked you? I would say, embrace the blade, kids. Tell her the truth. Until next time, this is Pastor Disaster, signing out. See you.